All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Paul Smith. I'll be your host today. I am the head of marketing over here at Koali, and I'm very excited to have with us the team from Tarleton State University who'll be sharing their journey with Koali Build for workflow and form automation and digital transformation down there at Tarleton State. Um, I like to start the webinar with a few compulsory slides about Koali. I'll make this quick. I know everybody here is really eager to hear the story from Tarleton and learn more about how they've used Koali Build down there. So I'll get through these next few slides as quickly as I can. First, a little bit of housekeeping. I have to let you all know that this demo is being recorded. And after the webinar, I'll send a link out to everybody with the recording so that you can watch it on your own time. There is a chat feature in this Zoom webinar. If you've ever used a Zoom before, this is just a little bit different. If you look down at the bottom of your screen, you'll notice an icon for Q&A. So have that open, and as we go through the webinar, any questions that come to mind, just drop those questions in there. I'll try to ask them as they come, but if we don't get to your question during the webinar, we'll try to address it afterwards by way of email. Here's our wonderful team from Tarleton. Justin Carrell is the Director of Continuous Improvement at Tarleton State University, and Ann Kern is the Director of the Office of Transformation Realization. So I love the name of that department. I wish every university had a department like yours, Joanne, because it must be doing wonderful work, and it's something that's so desperately needed these days. Um, a quick commercial about Koali. At Koali, we like to say that we build software for the future of higher education. And that means software that was created by higher education for higher education. And what we mean by this is we got our start as a nonprofit foundation. It was literally a collective of colleges and universities that came together with the mission of building their own software for higher education. And it was hugely successful. Over the next 10 years since the foundation launched in 2004, it grew exponentially. But around 2014, with the emergence of cloud-based software, there became a demand to have a single unified roadmap for these Koali products and a little more, support for cloud-based solutions. And so Koali, the company, was born in 2014. And since then, we have just grown exponentially. We have introduced the Koali platform for development, which is the baseline underpinnings of all Koali software, and has really positioned us to catapult into the next decade. Um, a quick logo splash. This is just a small sampling of some of our favorite partners. Everybody that we work with, we consider a true partner. Our product roadmap is largely driven by our friends and partners out in the Koali community. And we look forward to having everybody come join us at Koali Days, our annual user conference in April. This year it's in Philadelphia. And we just really look forward to catching up and really, you know, uh, it's further establishing those tight bonds with our customer partners. A quick look at the Koali platform. So across the Koali platform, we have 5 different suites of solution that we support. Koali Build, which we'll be talking about today for no-code forms and workflows. We also have financial management software for higher education, business continuity planning software built exclusively for higher education. A lot of really unique needs in large, complex organizations that a solution like Koali Ready can support. We have a full suite of tools for the registrar's office under the academic ops suite, and that includes curriculum, catalog, syllabus, academic advising, degree audit, and so on. And then for our research departments, another suite of tools that include things like sponsored programs, compliance, conflict of interest, and so on. Um, all of our Koali solutions have these same characteristics. They're easy to use, mobile first, they're accessible. We do continuous delivery. We have artificial intelligence baked into workflows. So it's not a tool that you jump out and use. It's there in the context of the workflow as you're using it. And finally, we have a zero bug policy. And that's not to say that we don't have bugs, we do, but when we find bugs, we pause the roadmap development, address the bug, and then move on with the roadmap. And this is how we avoid developing a lot of technical debt in our software. In terms of security and compliance, we've got a HECVAT 4 available for you. We've got FERPA compliance, SOC 2 compliance, and more recently, we started to talk about our accessibility compliance, and we've gone a step ahead. The federal requirement is WCAG 2.1. We are 2.2 compliant. And then we've got just some incredible numbers from our support team. I think Justin and Joanne today will probably share their experience working with our support team, but if you talk to any of the Quality customers, they'll share, how what their experience has been like. So very, very proud of our support team. I'll pause there. I feel like that's probably enough for a Quality commercial for the time being, and I'll stop sharing. And Joanne and Justin, give you a chance to introduce yourselves a little bit more in Tarleton State. And I think Joanne, you're going to kick things off for
yeah, I'm
us.
going to kick things off. Let me share my screen. Just a second. Are you guys able to see the slides?
No, it's perfect. Looks good.
All right. So, as Paul mentioned, I'm the director of our Office of Transformation, and there's actually two halves of that Office of Transformation. Justin will introduce himself here in a moment, but I have the traditional PMO components, project management, change management, but work very, very closely just in our peers. And he can talk more about the components that he has. We help each other out, so we kind of blend both areas. And I think we blend it very well. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Tarleton. If you haven't heard of Tarleton, we are in the state of Texas. We are part of the Texas A&M system, and one of the original members of the Texas A&M system, and we're very proud of that. We have 5 locations. Our main campus is in Stephenville, Texas, which is about an hour from Fort Worth. We have a Fort Worth location. We also operate out of Waco, Bryan, and then we have a large online presence. We have been serving Texas public higher education for over 126 years, so a long time in this arena. Some key facts: we are growing at an enormous rate. We have enrollment right now of 21,000 students and continuing to grow. We are an R2 research university, and that is continuing to grow. We have a goal to become an R1. We operate 10 traditional colleges, all of the things you'd expect to have in a public university. Also, our graduate studies, we have an honors college. Our university college is focused on several different levels of development, including workforce readiness and as well as general and applied sciences. And then we have a really large dual credit program that Justin has been a key part of developing. We offer over 136 degree programs. That includes 5 doctorates and 25 master's programs. So not small by any means, and definitely growing. So that creates some interesting challenges for us. Wanted to talk briefly about our journey to Quality, and then I'm going to hand this over to Justin to talk a little bit more about our implementation and the details of it. Enrollment growth drove the need to scale at a rapid pace. That is a key thing I want to say there. 9 years ago, when I started at Tarleton, we had around 13,000 students in enrollment. So we've had rapid growth. Just since 2020, since COVID, we've had probably 5,000 increase in our enrollment. Typical higher education and a lot of corporate environments, we had a lot of manual efforts going on, a lot of paper, a lot of walking, what I call sneaker workflows, walking paper around. And we had traditional workflow packages. We've had all the components that probably each one of you has in your environment. And the challenge we ran into is that we weren't scaling up. We just weren't able to make the connections we needed to make, and We would have point solutions, but we weren't making the full end-to-end process connections. And so one of the big things about Koali, and Justin is the one that suggested Koali. One of the big things is the data integrations, and the data integrations was pivotal for our success. That enabled end-to-end processes, and we both push data and pull data into our processes. So I'm going to stop there, Justin, let you take over.
Sounds
Stop
perfect.
sharing.
And I will share my screen as well. And we'll talk a little bit about kind of how we arrived at Koali and what we've done since we have onboarded. We worked with about 25 folks. Whenever we started, we were looking for those that were really interested to have solutions in place where they could own the process because they were closest to it. This has worked really well for us, the citizen development model. I know a lot of folks talk about potential shadow IT. We kind of developed a process to where IT is in charge of the integrations within Koali, and that kind of I like this. I use this phrase a lot. We pave the road and then we allow people to drive on the road. So the integrations and all those layers is getting the road paved, and then we really want application developers, and we call all these, we don't call them forms, and that's intentional. We want folks to know that it's more than a form solution, that they're actually building an application that has workflow components, that has approvals. And so with that in mind, it's really helped the way that we framed this particular platform at Tarleton. Um, within Koali, you are able to arrange your environment with spaces, with groups, and with users. We did this in alignment with our Workday human capital management system. So we looked at the divisions. That's kind of the roll up, if you will, for each part of the orgs. Then we go down to what's an academic department, what's a non-academic department. So this is a little bit of a view of kind of how we've arranged our environment within Koali. What this has helped us do is, again, those application developers that we've had, we're able to see within each part of the division who is using Koali, what are they using it for, and we're able to see their forms, and their forms live within a certain area within Koali. We can have it to where if there's an AVP, they may can see all the forms. If there's just a director, maybe they just see a small set. So it's really helped us in terms of roles and access to be able to kind of do this process the way that it's been defined here. Um, we are only on this journey for 11 months now, so I'm really proud of this. We have over 400 apps in production, and we're just about to hit a year being with Koali. So to me, what this shines is that the citizen development kind of mentality is working. The relationship with IT of building out those integrations with source systems, that's catching on. And so I'm really proud of this. We blurred this intentionally, but just to show the depth of what's happening here, we're really proud to see that the number of apps is continuing to grow. And we've got some really good complexity ones, but I'll pause there. Uh, Paul, it looked like you were going to mention
We,
something.
well, I was just gonna make sure people understood because this could seem overwhelming seeing 400 apps in a single view. But to your point earlier, each of those dedicated spaces that you have for your different departments would just see a subset. And I know Build has the capacity to do this, and I'm not sure if you have, but you can have spaces inside of spaces, subspaces, as it were, for smaller groups of app builders or managers where they would have their own dedicated apps.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you called that out. This is definitely an administrator view. So you would normally see three, four, five. Registrar, I think, is doing well. They've converted all their paper forms, so they've got about 20. But yeah, so a normal user application, they would see just a handful that's based on their space, and they'd only see the spaces that they're assigned to. So it's definitely got a lot of access controls within the platform. Here's a couple of things that we've tried to bridge. So now that we kind of have, Joanne kind of talked about the disparity that we had before Koali. What we have now is we were able to talk to a lot of these source systems and bring that information in when folks are completing forms. So this is kind of what our environment looks like. We're a Banner school, Canvas school, Workday Salesforce, EAB, Engage, Team Dynamics for tickets. Those are all systems that don't normally legacy talk to each other. But with a solution like this, as long as any of these particular solutions have a API endpoint, you're able to bring that into Koali Build. And we'll go into some of this with kind of a live demo that we have on a forum of what would be the use case of why you would bring in this particular data. Um, Sampling integrations, I'm really excited about this. So we do keep a major search crosswalk table. Um, we use that inside of Salesforce. So if anybody wants to add a major onto Koali, we provide them with this major search. And then there's a lot of data fields that are part of that folks can add on to forms. We have in Banner where you can collect by just passing in the student ID number, the curriculum of that student. We can get the major, we can get the term catalog, field of study that that individual is. So rather than asking for those questions, we're able to just with one pass of the ID number get all that information from the system of record. EAB, we've got it to where we can get their academic advisor and their care team. Engage, all the student organizations that we have across campus is a drop-down list. So anytime that our student orgs want to do a quality form and they want to ask what student org you're on, instead of typing in every single time, every form, we have one roll-up of a list, and that's coming directly from that platform. So if a new system, a new organization shows up in Engage, it'll also show up in Koali as well. We have one use case where name changes. Our registrar's office wanted to come to us and say, we want to do the approval in Koali, but then we have to pass it to our server team to actually do the email address change. And that's all been kind of an email. Maybe occasionally we'll open up a ticket. What can you do there? So inside of the workflow after the approval, you can actually push it to a source system as well. So we created a ticket if a individual has been approved through documentation of a name change, then that gets pushed to an IT ticket, and then the email address gets changed, and then it comes back into Koali and says, oh, it's been changed, and then it closes everything out. So there's a push, a pause, and then the activity is done in a ticketing system that IT is familiar with, and then it comes back in and it closes everything out. So some really unique use cases that we're doing where we're trying to bridge the gap of what normally would be an email, a phone call, process that you're just waiting for somebody to do something. We are started to do faculty hiring of requesting positions. And so one of the things that was requested was to do a calculator of 35% on top of the base. So we did a fringe benefit calculator. So whatever they were wanting to do for the base salary, we did the times 35% and showed that on the form. We also had a form that they wanted to do priority registration for parents for dependents that were under the age of 18. So we created a workflow that would take the birthday and then it would do a calculation and say, are they over or under the age of 18? And then it would be a true or false. And if it was false, it would go one direction in Koali. If it was true, it would go another direction so that students would know we were using that. So instead of calculating that after submission, we're able to do that kind of pre-flight and put them on a denial path if they're over 18 or get them to where we can get the priority registration. So those are a couple of things that have been really exciting for us to be able to do within the platform. So it's been really nice to see that. Other unique use cases that we've done, we have our honors college application completely in Koali, and that's pushing all that into Salesforce. We have a really nice program where we collect all of our undergraduates that are graduating. We put them into a cohort, if you will, and then they're able to do a streamlined graduation application. So we just ask a very handful set of questions because we already know everything about the student. We already know where they live and all that. So we're just able to ask a couple of questions like, what graduate major do you want? So doing a lot of those things in Koali. Corps Cadets came to us and said, hey, we heard Honors College is doing this. So a lot of this is by word of mouth and saying, hey, we want what they have. And then Qualtrics, we're doing a lot of email of getting accounts created. And there was an administrator. He's like, can we do something where we just ask these questions on a form and I hit approve and it does it? I'm like, absolutely, we sure can. So we have it where they request the Qualtrics account and then it will push that and will actually create the user all from within a Koali form. So those are a couple of things. This is showing the record of the source system on the left. So this is what I was saying before, that major search. It's showing that on the left, and then this is what it translates to with the fields that we wanted on Koali. So they are able to do an active search against all of our majors with that crosswalk table, and then we're able to bring in the data fields that we would need. So we want to kind of show you from a source system to what you can ask. The only question we're asking on this is the major, and it's bringing in all these other data points as well. And then if we were okay, I can definitely show kind of an integration demo of what this might look like inside of the platform. So a typical form, you might ask for a university ID number. You might ask for a first name, last name, major, ask for a new major, ask for their classification. That's kind of where we were at, kind of pre-Koali. And this isn't ideal because people could put in lowercase for their name. They could put in all uppercase for their name. And as you can imagine, the data collection is not where you would want it to be. They might have a major that isn't related to anything that you're offering in the catalog, and might put that in, or they might misspell something, and then you would have to go and make that correction. And then, so there's all different kinds of things that would happen if you don't have something talking to a source system. So, and then the other thing, if we needed to route this to something, if they put in the wrong email address, it wouldn't route the way you want. So those are all things and mechanics that we've kind of seen with different platforms. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to completely remove this gadget, and we will be able to see what that looks like if we were to bring in an integration point. So I'm going to do the exact same thing, kind of building it live. This is kind of a sample. So I made a sample record, if you will, specific for this webinar. So don't worry about any kind of data sharing. This is a fake record. But what I'm excited is I'm bringing in one data point, and I said that I wanted to bring in a people record. And so what that has given me now is I have access to all of these data points by just passing in the ID number from Banner. And the way that it works within the system is there's 4 data points that we push to Koali. We push first name, last name, we push email address, school email address, and then the school ID number. So I can do the submitter and I can push in their school ID number. For this, I'm going to do a fixed value because I've got a particular record that I want to show that's for this, but I'm going to bring over those same fields that we did before. So we'll bring over first name, and what's really great about this is we're not asking these questions. We're getting it directly from the source system. So I can bring in their ID number. I can bring in what their credits are, what they were earned. I can bring in their mobile number, whether they're an athlete or not, what their major is. And so because I have this integration, I can bring in their academic standing. Then if I pass in, and then I want to say this is the student. So we're going to rename this to student. If I pass in the value of that, what happens is when they log in with an SSO. So we know who this individual is by them logging into the form. I didn't have to ask any of these questions. I have last name twice. Let me bring in first name. Sorry about that. First name, and then we'll remove this. But I'm really excited about this because that's less questions that we're asking. It's going directly from a source system. You also saw that we had the advisor's email address in this particular example. And what that lets us do is now that when we're talking about kind of workflow, rather than asking the student that information, we're able to push this. So if this is a change major form, we're able to push this immediately to an advisor because we're getting that directly from a source system. So that's a little bit of excitement there. I'll pause and see if there's been any questions asked from the chat, but definitely excited about the art of the possible.
We have
Yeah,
two
I
questions, Justin. Paul,
yeah,
you need me to ask him
yeah,
or you?
I'll got these. So
Okay.
Marcella wants to know about integration, and she's asking about a couple platforms specifically. And I'm not sure if either of you are familiar with these, but she's asking about DSpace's Chris, which I'm not familiar with, or DSpace Chris, and or Dataverse. Before you all answer, I'm curious about your take on this, but my general response to integrations about or questions about integrations with quality platform products is that we have an open API. We have the world's biggest outlet and we're ready to receive data. And it's really just a question of other systems' ability to plug in to those API integrations. And so our only limitation is other systems limitations as it relates to integration. So as long as they have plug and play interoperability on their end by way of APIs, we're ready to move all of that data in and out. And for the system level administrator and build, you have effectively what I call God level access to whatever you want to set up. And so you determine in your data governance model who in your groups based on roles, I mean, go down to the individual if you want it to, not just what integrations they have access to, but what elements from those integrations they'll have access to and what kind of changes, whether it's read and write, read only, write only, you fill in the blank. You get to determine exactly how those integrations work. Justin or Joanne, do you have anything to add there?
That's a good point. I'm not familiar with either one of those, but I would say that if they have an API and they are able to interact with JSON, so if you look at their particular help support and you type in API, you type in JSON, if they have that capability, then you will more than likely be able to integrate here. So that's kind of the common language that's used to pass information to and from. So I would say, yeah, start with your vendor, see what's possible. But yeah, very good question. And then there was a question about tickets starting in Koali, or is it certain workflows? That was a specific use case where our registrar was really seeing Koali and they wanted to have everything start there. It's not replacing Team Dynamics tickets by any means. Most of those are still doing the forms within Team Dynamics. This was just more of a once it got to a certain level, rather than a registrar have to then open up a ticket about the email change, about the name change, they could just push it automatically. So that's the easing of the burden of not, it starts with one system and we wanted an end-to-end kind of an operation. So it didn't have a manual, okay, now we got to wait. We got to go here and then we got to come back once it's been fulfilled. We wanted to have it just really smooth, streamlined. So that was a very unique case, just kind of showing what might be possible when you're trying to move from one system to another. So very good question.
And while we're on the topic of integration, then someone would like to know if you're writing data from Quali into Salesforce, or are you just pulling data from Salesforce into your Quali applications?
Another good question. We're doing both. So we're pulling information from Salesforce using different fields. We're looking at what's the primary key. Usually it's a banner ID or a UIN for an employee, or maybe it's a major code. So we're getting all that information into a Koali form, but then also at a certain point in the workflow after an approval, we're actually doing a push back into Salesforce. Some of the ways that we're able to do that is we have middleware right now. We're using Power Automate. Your IT team may be familiar with Boomi, MuleSoft, kind of anything in that space that would allow you to kind of put glue between these two software packages. So we're using endpoints for pushing into Salesforce through Power Automate, mostly because that particular application already has native Salesforce connectors. So it really made sense for us. We're able to secure that with an API key at the top of that particular integration so that no one can use that integration unless they know that API key. Whenever we set that up in Koali, we make sure that that signature is there so that only Koali can use it. But yes, pull and push, we're doing both of those with Salesforce.
Awesome. And I'm obliged at this point to name drop Quali Bridge, our brand new solution for data integration. I know you all haven't rolled it out yet, but that is probably the best way to integrate with Quali platform solutions. Every time I see a demo, I'm kind of blown away. It's a very WYSIWYG drag and drop controller that gives you full control over how all of those integrations will work. And as it relates to I mentioned AI at the beginning. Quali doesn't have, like, we're not forcing you to use our AI solution. You can use your own in-house developed AI tool. I know a lot of universities are building their own AI solutions, or if you want to use something like Claude or Gemini or you know, um, Chat GPT or what have you, it's very simple to plug those integrations into the Quali platform. And then just like any other integration, you get to choose where on forms, or in the context of a workflow, you want those AI interactions to happen. Um, and that kind of takes me on the topic of workflows. Justin, you did a wonderful demo of form building and how integrations work in the context of a form. But when we talk about forms and workflows, a lot of people will think of those as two separate things. Build really combines those together into what we call an app. And an app is just a combination of a form with a workflow attached to it. And the workflows really dictate what happens after a form is submitted. Where does it go? Who does it go to? Are there conditional rules? Are there points along the journey where people will need to add information to a particular workflow? Can you talk a little bit about your experience building and using workflows in Build?
Absolutely. We'll go back to our demo that we were showing earlier of if we there's a couple of great data points that I like about this particular form. If we were wanting to have athletics to be queued in if they're changing their major, because that might have some implications. If we were wanting to send this to an advisor if they were not in good standing, that might have some implications too. So you really need to think about the triggers that you are creating either from a workflow or from a drop down in a form, and then that's going to kind of help with your branching scenario. So let's go with the one first where we want this to immediately go to the academic advisor. Within workflow, what we're able to do now is you can bring over an approval, you can bring over a task, an acknowledgement. So if we bring over an approval from the advisor, what we're able to do is because that integration has the advisor's email address in there, we're able to route it dynamically. So we didn't, as a form builder, do anything except add the integration for the student. And because that particular integration also told us the advisor's email address, now we're dynamically able to route that approver to the advisor. Something you weren't able to do with systems where if you weren't bringing in those integration points. But in talking with the institution, what ended up happening is the athletics said, we want to see it first. So you can actually bring in a branching scenario. And what the branching scenario would do is if the student was an athlete and that was set to true, then this might be the athletic stop. And then so you can have a stop here for them. And then you can build in, if it's true, maybe then we need to send this to somebody in athletics. And then it would go to the advisor. So this only happens if that athlete is set to true. You could also kind of do a branch within a branch where if it is true, then you can say, well, what sport? So you can get really granular if you want. I've seen this pushed where you can do a branch within a branch, but the idea here is if there are things along the way that need to happen because you have this, look at how easy that was to make that branch because we had a trigger, if you will, within the form of were they an athlete, yes or no. In this case, this would breeze right through, wouldn't touch that because they are not a athlete at this point. The other thing to note is we were talking about a kind of a change of major form, if you will. So if we have major on here, it will tell them what their major is. But if we wanted to, normally what you'd have to do in most solutions is you have to do like a drop down and pick all your majors and add them and do that for every single form. But I kind of alluded that we have a majors list that we're keeping up to date that we're wanting everybody to use. So if we do that major list, we're able to pick that search. And now this is going to be new major. It's only going to show them what is in our catalog. So if they start typing in something, it will search for it. So it's going out right now to Salesforce as it will. And once it finds that information, it will provide a drop down of that and you can select that particular new major. So in this case, we wanted to do majors and minors together because we were having some issues where we couldn't connect concentration or we couldn't connect minors. So the way we've developed this crosswalk table is you pick your major, your minor's kind of on the left hand or the right hand side. So when you select that, that's from a true data source. So if you wanted to do a workflow where maybe you've got different teams that are going to be based on like colleges, if we had colleges as part of the major, we could then route where if everything's true on the new major, I don't have college in here, but we could do it like a major code. And if we wanted to have major code was started with something, then you could start to do some branching scenarios there where, okay, you want to change the major. Well, we need to let your previous college know about it. We need to let your new college know about it. So these are all things you can do on the journey as long as you kind of have that connective tissue from a previous integration. So I don't know if that kind of answers the questions about kind of what the workflow
It
looks like.
does. It certainly touches on it. And I think folks are, you might be blowing a few people away here, Justin,
Sure.
by the capacity. And I'm kind of glad for it in a way, because one of the things that as a marketer I run into all the time is, we're pushing this no code solution. Well, historically, and if I'm being honest, like out in the market, every other no code solution out there is what I would describe as a lightweight solution. It doesn't have the power and capability to support the complexity of a large, complex institution. And so it's always tricky to try and, convince people that no, it's no code, but you can still do everything that you want to do. So I appreciate you sharing that. There was one thing on the workflow, and I think you touched on this, but one of the reactions that we often hear from people is the ability to test a workflow while it's in development instead of pushing it into production and trying to run a test and then notifying, everybody along the journey of that workflow for a test scenario. So being able to make sure it's working exactly the way that you want the workflow to work before you push it into production. And then the other thing about roles that I love so much is, like any large organization, there's going to be turnover as people come and go and change roles and get promoted. So having the ability to assign a step in a workflow to a role as opposed to an individual really can help make that workflow evergreen, right? So as people, you would just assign that new person to the role, that integration will pull that role into the build environment. And then as the future workflows commence, this new person would be involved along the way. Now, I want to pause for a second, because we've covered a lot of ground very, very quickly, and I'm having a lot of fun watching you go through. You know, you could basically be my solutions engineer on the road at this point, Justin, doing demos for Koali. But I want to take a step back, Joanne, and for a lot of folks in this webinar who will be watching this webinar, one of their great challenges that we hear is, here's where I am today, and I'm watching this webinar with Tarleton, and I can sort of imagine myself in this future state. But it's the part that in between that really frightens me. I don't know where would I even start with rollout, with training, like even the decision-making process of trying to get stakeholders on board so that we could convince everybody that this is the right solution for our college or university. So if we go to your journey, Joanne, let's actually go back in time to before y'all discovered Quality Build and help paint a picture for everybody of what Tarleton looked like. You described to me in our previous conversations about having a mishmash of solutions. You described your sneaker network or sneaker workflows. What was life like before you discovered Quality Build?
So we had a lot of a lot of Word documents and Excel documents and paper flows. As an example, employee scholarships. To get an employee scholarship, which was about $200 or $300, you had to walk it around campus and get the signature of the dean, the vice president, the CFO, and your boss. And so I actually was teasing people. This is how we make sure we're not giving out too many scholarships. But that was just one example. That we had similar examples with the registrar's office, with adding classes and dropping classes and changing majors. Some of the things that Justin's shown you. And Justin is amazing with regard to what all he's been able to do with the data integrations and how he's made this work. And so he definitely could be your solutions architect. But one of the things that Justin and I had talked about early on, and we both realized there was a need for workflows. I'd actually written a business case on it in, I think, 2018, 2017, about trying to get to an enterprise workflow. And at the time, it was just cost prohibitive to us. And then Justin saw Koali. We got some exposure to it, and we revisited it, I think, 3 times before we were able to sell the business case. And quite honestly, the last business case we sold was on replacing. It was on replacing existing components that we were using, existing software we were using, but it was also very much sold on continuous improvement. It was sold on making our processes more scalable, making our processes more efficient. And what Justin showed you with the data integrations is a critical piece to quality. When we have people filling out forms and they're guessing, one of the forms that both Justin and I worked on, unfortunately, we've worked on it for quite a bit of time here, is a hiring form for faculty. And it just reflects the complexity of our hiring processes. And when we first started this, they were doing it in Word, and they were typing in what's the faculty member's name, what's their position, what's their PIN, what do we think they were making, what are we trying to do. We were able to pull that data from Workday and populate it. And you basically say, now that is not a lookup to see who's making what. We were very careful about that. There's only certain people that can initiate that form, but you could sit there and pull in a PIN number and identify a position and say, this is what a professor in the College of Business should, this is the range that's been approved by Texas A&M. This is the range we should be hiring in. That in and of itself has helped improve the quality of those processes. And so that was a critical piece of it. And I think the other thing is just transparency. One of the things Justin didn't show you, but and one of the things I love is the dashboard, because you can see exactly where a document's at, how long it's been sitting at a workflow step, who it's waiting on. And we had challenges with that from a transparency standpoint. We got a lot of finger pointing of, oh no, I submitted it over here. I'm waiting on HR. I'm waiting on IT. I'm waiting on the provost office. And we're going, well, so where is it? The transparency is that was a huge selling point, the ability to be able to show that. So
Okay, so
long-winded answer.
yeah, no, so you did your due diligence. It sounds like you really did some stress testing. But what what was that experience like? So you find build, I think you're connecting with Liz probably at that point, one of our account executives on the team. She introduces you to build, and I believe she set you all up with a sandbox environment, if I got that right.
Yes.
So you've got your sandbox. What are some of the first things that you try out in that sandbox?
So neither one of us is very shy. We had a request from the provost to automate this post-search hire process. And so we requested the sandbox. I think we had it within an hour. And within about an hour of that, we were already building the form we needed for this post-search hire process. And as we were going through the rest of the evaluation and we were going through the procurement processes and the contract reviews, which take quite a bit of time. We built that form out, and that not just a form, we built out that application because it had multiple forms in it, multiple flows in it. And so when we actually launched, we asked to actually take that one to production. So having a sandbox enabled us to really dig in and get started. And we learned a tremendous amount in those first few months while we were going through contracts and waiting on procurement processes and things that
Yeah.
generally take us a long time. By the time we launched, we were getting lots of feedback from you guys about our level of understanding of spaces and blueprints and roles and forms and flows. And as soon as we got a production environment, Justin started on data integrations.
Yeah.
So that sandbox, and don't minimize that. That was our learning environment, and
Yeah.
it still has been.
Now, a couple times you have mentioned, Joanne, that in addition to this or a key component of your digital transformation effort was going to be scaling this initiative beyond this central group. And for a lot of folks in IT, I think that's a scary proposition, particularly as they think about data governance. And we've covered quite a bit in data governance. But when you have that sandbox environment, can you talk about how you farmed, how you socialized this idea across the institution and got more stakeholder buy-in, and who was involved in those early days of
We report up to the CIO. We both report to the CIO, and our CIO reports into our CFO. And one of our areas that we had a lot of forms and flows was in our finance area. So finance and HR at the time were both reporting to our CFO. We had a lot of forms and flows and still paper processes in our HR area. So we had good use cases. They wanted process automation. We had excellent executive support from both of those, AVP and VP, executive VP. And so that helped us to get on a path of centralizing on an enterprise form, enterprise product. But I also think the fact that the rapid delivery and I'm gonna say this was a Justin thing, the use of citizen development. We pulled in champions in our first launch, people that we knew had done a lot of forms development and a lot of flows, and we had them go through the training and the implementation activities. And those were our first developers. And Justin mentioned the registrar's office. Our registrar's office came out of the gate, and they had 6 apps within the first couple of weeks, and it's
wow.
grown to over 20. And we part of it was get them up to speed, get them trained, and get out of the way. But part of it has also been circling back more from a consulting perspective. We both hold each other accountable to not do it for them, but more from a consulting perspective to say, what kind of problem are you having? Let me show you one I've done that's similar to that. Let's see if we can talk you through how to do it, because the two of us would not be able to support this environment if we were developing all the forms.
This is a really important point because when you showed 400 plus apps, for a lot of folks are like imagining the waterfall or fire hose of inbound tickets that they're going to receive for change requests, for updates. But you've really set yourself up in a situation where these app builders now, once they're trained and they have their own space, they become masters of their domain. They
Yes.
own their own apps. They can fix their own apps, augment their own apps. They might come to you for additional integrations from time to time. But by and large, as I understand it, they're building and maintaining their own apps. And that is what has allowed you to have this rapid, accelerated
Yes.
scaling for digital transformation.
Yes, and I would say a big part of that is that they're the process owners. They're the ones that know the process is the best. If we have to get up to speed on the process, it's going to slow down the delivery, but there's two of us. And so we're doing system administration for this application, as well as some other system administration on top of our day job. And so we need to make sure that that's an effective model, and we could not have done it without citizen development.
I'd like to go
Now,
back
that
to
being,
your first.
sorry, Justin, go ahead.
I'd like to go back to your first question that you said about the IT concern. What we did early on was we went to every data owner and we said, we're building out this integration. Do you want it to be available for a small set of apps? Do you want it to be available for the whole instance? And then what we did, we created a Koali app and said, if you're developing a new form and you have an integration that's kind of behind it, where the data owner's like, I need to know why they would need to know the curriculum of every student. So that's one that's not available for the entire instance. So there are some that the data owner's like, it's okay because it's directory information. So I'm okay with every Koali app builder to have it. So for those IT folks in the call and you're looking at citizen development, the way that we've handled it is every data owner decides, is this something that's available for every form builder or application developer, or is it they have to ask special permission, and then that gets retained within the Koali form. And then with the way that that's set up on the rights, we're able to put in that form, and then they immediately have access to that integration. So by and large, we don't have most of these open to just everybody. There's a small subset that if you're starting in Koali, you'll maybe see these 3 or 4. Most of them you kind of have to go through an approval vetting process of why are you asking these questions? What are you going to get out of it? Really easy to get through, but those go to the data owner so they can make those particular decisions.
Yeah. So I love this metaphor of building the road, right? You're laying the groundwork, you're enabling, you're teaching folks how to fish on their own, but they're, speaking of being on the road, Joanne, there are certain times where people might come to you with an emergency request, and you have a fun story about that.
I do. We launched an event center in August, and we've done events on campus. We have the traditional type stadiums and all those things, but this is an event center. It's a conference center. We had not had that before. We built it. It's amazing. We've had concerts there. We've had comedians there. We've had lots of activities there. We also play basketball there. But it launched, and I was contacted like 2 weeks before the launch saying, we have a problem. We need an internal quote system for all the faculty and staff all the departments that are asking to use it. And we didn't see this coming, and we're doing it in Word. And I was actually traveling with my husband and my daughter to A&M. And so I took my laptop with me. I always take my laptop. And between Tarleton and A&M, which is about a 3-hour drive, I developed a quote system in Kowali, and basically got to the hotel, checked in, sent them a text message, said, here's the link. Can you test this tonight and give me some feedback? I'm going to be in meetings all day tomorrow, but we have a 3-hour drive back on Saturday. So we turned something around that rapidly. And I will say a large part of it has to do with the time we spent in the sandbox, the time that Justin and I have spent, working together and collaborating on how we want things to look, and how we want spaces and blueprints and roles to work, but also the data integrations. Those were critical, but that was a quick win to a critical process. Um, they're still working through lots of other things with how they're going to operate that event center, and they're doing a really good job. We've had a bunch of events there, but that's just one example. And we get requests like that all the time.
Sure.
We're trying not to build them for them. So,
Yeah.
but
But in an emergency and a pinch, they know
yeah,
who to
in
call.
emergency and a pinch, we've both done it. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, this whole story is really about lifting up the entire university. And you guys have just done such an amazing job. I'm so proud of the work that you've done and excited for what's to come. It's really an inspiring story. I think one of our better
we've got
examples
a
of build being really leveraged to its fullest.
so Paul, we got a couple of questions. Justin,
Sure,
do you
yeah,
want to
let's
answer real
address
quickly?
those. Yeah.
Justin?
Uh, Yeah, I'll let you guys take these. So Jamie wants to know, he's asking if you could clarify a little bit about how you're using Power Automate between Koali and Salesforce as opposed to directly integrating Koali and Salesforce.
We will probably move forward to native integration in the future. It just made sense for us at the moment because there's already connections with Power Automate already has Salesforce integrations that we log in with an integration user, and then whatever that integration user has access to is what is in there for Power Automate. But we'll probably end up doing a connected app in the future. We just haven't at this point, just because we knew that there was something available within the Power Automate. And then there was a question that came from an individual is how do you ask for integrations? I wanted to show that form that is available that we have where folks are able to ask for integration. So using Koali to ask for Koali information. So this is where they can ask for an integration. We talk about what's the integration request, what's the name of the form. We have to know the name of the form so we can apply the integration to them. We kind of get some information so that the data owner knows what are you trying to do with this form, what's the purpose, and then when do you need this by. So we say that for smaller integrations, we can do it pretty quick. For larger ones, it may take some time. This is an integration, so it's going to pop up here and say you need to give us at least 14 days to be able to process this. This was one that shows, and we did some calculations with Power Automate to say, wait a minute, this date isn't 14 days into the future. So kind of showing what some of that looks like. But then we're able to show the source systems that we have. And then if they wanted to use this particular data, they say why. If they wanted to talk about what they need from Canvas, they could ask that question. If they wanted something from Banner, and then when they submit, on the workflow side of the house, that goes to all of the data owners for those particular source systems. So that's a little bit about how we're able to ask those questions to those data owners. And then once they approve it, we go into their form, we give them access to that particular information. We do maybe a working session to show them how the mechanics work, and they're off to the races at that point.
I love it. So 400 plus apps built to date. How many app builders do y'all have building apps at Tarleton?
We probably have close to about 100 at this point that are building apps. And then when I looked yesterday, we were at about 27,000 submissions across all of those apps. So we're really pleased to
And
see.
let's frame that in context.
Yeah.
When was your go live date?
Our go live, so we started implementation middle of March, and I think our first app was published around April. So we're looking at 8 to 9 months of a ramp up of this is where we are. So we've been really pleased thus far with where we've come.
And this is a good setup for my last question here at the bottom of the hour, which is if you imagine yourselves, let's say 2 years from now, all right, given your trajectory, your initiatives, the mission that you're on, especially in your department, where what does Tarleton look like 2 years from now? And I'll ask you to think about that for a second. I'm going to pick on you first, Justin.
Definitely. So I would like to see us add more source systems into this. I'd like to see more app builders, more folks that are familiar with process automation and I say success really looks like mapping that first. You can jump in, but the art of the possible is don't just transfer over and just go business as usual. Really visualize of how can we make this better because of what we have. So I would say what we look like in 2 years is just going to be more of connecting these systems together and bringing that data so that it's inside of a workflow that we can process through.
And Joanne, how about you? From a high level, where do you see Tarleton 2 years from now?
I think there's two things. So we're like most organizations looking at AI. Justin is pushing a big project right now on AI, and I think there's opportunities you mentioned earlier where we can integrate that. One of them is our project management request process, and we're already working with AI with that. We do our project management request in Koali, so I would like to pull those two pieces together. But in general, I think the opportunity is there as we've brought on our citizen developers to help them move up the value stream, learn more of the advanced capabilities. Bridge is an opportunity, but learn more of those advanced capabilities. And I would like to see us going back and looking at the apps to say, is there an opportunity to consolidate and make it more end to end? And I think that is something over the next 2 years that we could get more value add. We're already driving a lot of value out of this. And we shut down another system. I'm not going to name it, but we shut it down last week. And we did not have a lot of fight from people because they'd already moved a lot of their things over to quality. So,
Well, this was a form and workflow solution.
mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So you sort of pulling together, one of the things that we hear is there's not just one, but multiple forms and workflow solutions kind of peppered through. You've got shadow IT doing their own thing in another department, paying another license fee for another solution. So not only is this a more elegant approach to have a systemic approach to digital transformation, but it's also a significant cost savings. It just sounds like, our friends over at Fresno State in California, when they rolled out a couple of years ago, they launched with a pretty impressive marketing campaign. They really went for it, and they coined the whole thing, the automated university. And that's really what it's starting to sound like with you all is this sort of automated environment where all the friction between the beginning of an idea or question or request to its finality becomes a lot more fluid and automated. And that saves a lot of time. But this is so important for higher ed right now. We're going through so much change recently. It's putting a lot of people in really stressful situations. I talked to a group, for another webinar we have coming up here pretty soon, and they were sharing how there was a staff reduction that took place, and they weren't able to backfill those positions. And so when that happens, particularly at university, the work doesn't go away. The things that had to get done still need to get done. You just have fewer people, not to mention the loss of institutional knowledge when that happens. Um, so having something, here's a question for you, Justin. If you were to disappear tomorrow, just bus effect, right? Poof, and you won the lottery and you're off in the Caymans, enjoying life. Do you feel comfortable that somebody else could jump into your position and sort of pick up where you left off?
I think that goes to what we need to talk about. We need to do more of the knowledge transfer and having a compository of that. So I think we can get there, but maybe not tomorrow. Maybe a couple of months from now.
Yeah,
The forms development, because of the work he's done on
Yeah,
systems development, they would
yeah,
continue to develop.
I agree.
But he is the data integration guru, and there's a whole lot of other things that Justin does. So yeah, you panicked me when you said if Justin disappears. That's the joke is
we're
we need to
we're not
clone.
going to steal Justin from
We need
top.
to
Don't
clone
worry.
Justin about 12 times.
All
Um,
right, we should probably end there. We're over time. Thanks for everybody that stuck around for the extra couple of minutes. This was so much fun. I'm really grateful for you being generous with your time and sharing your story. I think it's going to help a lot of people who, are finding themselves where you all were just a couple of years ago. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Have a good
Thank you,
rest of your
guys.
day. I'll be sending out a link to this recording for everybody who registered. Feel free to share it with your peers. And yeah, we have more webinars coming in the future, so stay tuned. All right. Bye, everybody.